transformation, we shall call this as linear operator. Okay, when V is equal to W, then LVV, it is a space of all linear transformation from into W, V into V, and we call them as collection of all linear operators. Okay. Now, when we consider collection of all linear operators, then we get still richer structure, because LBW, it always formed a vector space. And what we said, if W is equal to V, then we call this as collection of linear operators. And suppose V is equal to F, and suppose V is equal to F, then this is called collection of all linear functional. So depending upon the codomain, we have accordingly called the linear transformation, linear operators, or linear functional. And as I told you, that if V is m-dimensional vector space, W is n-dimensional vector space, then LBW is an m into n dimensional vector space. Now, if V is equal to W, naturally LVV is going to be uh, of dimension m square, and LVF shall be of dimension m itself. So these things we have to keep in mind. One thing more, that if V and W are finite dimensional vector spaces, T is a linear transformation from V into W. So V being a finite dimensional vector space, say dimension M, if V1, V2, Vm is a basis of V, then with the help of this T, I can just define a matrix. We can always define a matrix. That is called matrix belonging to this linear transformation. I think all of you know how to define this matrix, because we are just to consider the action of T on these basis vector. I will express them as a linear combination of basic elements of W, and then I can write directly the matrix of T with respect to this base B. If you change the base, matrix will also change. And if V is m-n dimensional and W is n-dimensional, then matrix is going to be of dimension m by n only. But when W is equal to V, then in this case, the matrix is going to be a square matrix, and its order will be always n squared. Okay, so basically, I shall be interested in studying these square matrices, that is from a vector space onto itself. And as usual, if we just look up at LVV, then if T1 and T2 belongs to LVV, that is they are linear operators from V onto V, then I can define T1 plus T2 of V at T1 V plus T2 V, and for any alpha in V, alpha of T1, same operation as I did for LVW. But in this case, I have got something more, because I can easily compose them. So if T1 and T2 are two linear operators, then I define T1, T2 of V to be T1 of T2 of V. T2 of V is meaningful because it belongs to V, so T1 I can operate by T1. Okay, so T1, T2 is again a linear operator, and so it belongs to LVV. It satisfies the associative law, and it satisfies distributive laws and associative law. And it has got one more additional property, namely fourth one, which I mentioned. If alpha is any element of F, then alpha of T1 of T2 is nothing but T1 of alpha of T2, and it is the same as alpha of T1, T2. This particular property, it is not generally possessed by linear transformations, but this is true in case of linear operator. And this has given rise to a very important concept that is called algebra. That is called an algebra. So we will see definition that an associative ring A, because there do exist non-associative algebras, but we shall be interested particularly only in associative algebras. An associative algebra A is called an associative ring A is called an algebra over a field F if A is a vector space over F and it satisfies an additional property, namely, what happened? Namely alpha of AB, where A and B are elements of A and alpha belongs to F, then alpha times AB is equal to alpha A of B and A of alpha of B. Whenever this condition satisfies, this is called an algebra. And just now we have seen that if we look up at LBV, then it is an algebra because this property is there. And if we are given an algebra, then we have got a very, very important result, which we are going to prove very often in the course of development of the theory. And it says that let A be an algebra with unit element over a field F, then A is always isomorphic to a sub-algebra AB for some vector space V over F. Every algebra is isomorphic to a sub-algebra of space of all linear operators on some vector space V. So we are going to just sketch the proof of this particular theorem because it is going to play a very important role in the development of our theory. So as far as proof is concerned, there is a standard technique. What we do, we take this, first of all, we have said that A is isomorphic to some sub-algebra AV, where V is any vector space. So let me take this V to be A itself. Let me take V to be A itself. And for any A alpha in A, let me define a function T alpha from A to A by setting T alpha V is equal to V of alpha. Then it can be seen that this T alpha is nothing but a linear transformation. It's a linear operator. So once I have got this a linear operator, then my problem becomes simple. What I do, corresponding to each element of A, I am going to consider these operators T alpha. That is, let me define a function psi from A to V, where V is nothing but A itself. Remember, that is a collection of linear operators on V. It is not the collection of all linear operators. It is only those linear operators which correspond to elements of A. So we claim that this psi, it is an isomorphism. And for that, I have to prove that it is 1, 1 on 2. Okay. So if alpha, beta are any two elements of A, then what is psi of alpha plus beta? It is not T of alpha plus beta, but it can be seen by just by operating it on some element of A. T of alpha plus beta is the same as T alpha plus T beta. And that is psi alpha plus psi beta. And likewise, if alpha belongs to A and A belongs to F, then psi of A alpha is nothing but T of A alpha. This is A times T alpha. This shows that this psi is a homomorphism. And next we will show that psi is 1, 1. Because once we show that psi is 1, 1, we are working in finite dimensional vector spaces. So it will automatically be on 2. And in order to show that psi is 1, 1, we will show that the kernel of psi is nothing but single element 0, identity, unit element. So suppose alpha belongs to A, be in the kernel of psi. Then psi of alpha is nothing but 0. And this implies tau of alpha equal to 0. That is, by my definition, tau alpha of V equal to 0 for all V in A. That is, V of alpha equal to 0 for all V in A. Now remember, we have assumed that A contains unit elements, and so far we did make use of this particular fact here, because what we have shown that V of alpha equal to 0 for all V in A. In particular, if I take V to be unit element, this shows that alpha equal to 0. Okay, it means kernel psi contains only 0 element, and hence psi becomes an isomorphism. And hence psi becomes an isomorphism. So, psi, this algebra which contains unit element, it is associative algebra with the unit element. So it is always isomorphic to a some algebra A of V for some vector space V, and in this case we have taken V to be A itself. Okay. Now, using this, we are going to prove another result. Let A be an algebra with the unit element over some field F, and suppose that dimension of A over F be M. Then what we are going to prove that every element of A satisfies a polynomial of degree equal to dimension of A over F. That is, if dimension of A over F is M, then each element of A satisfies a polynomial of degree M. And proof is again a simple. So let E be a unit element, denote the unit element of A. And suppose alpha is any element of A. I will find a polynomial of degree at most M, which is satisfied by alpha. Now alpha belongs to A, so consider these M plus 1 elements. E, alpha, alpha square, alpha raised to power M, they are all elements in A. And since A is M dimensional, and these are M plus 1 vectors, so they are linearly dependent. And hence we can always find scalars A0, A1, A2, AM, not all of which are 0, such that A0 plus A1 alpha plus A2 alpha square plus AM alpha raised to the power M equal to 0. Now if I consider Qx to be polynomial, A0 plus A1x plus A2x square plus AMX raised to the power M, then this Qx is satisfied by alpha. So here is a polynomial of degree M which is satisfied by A. So every element of A satisfies a polynomial of degree M. Now we have seen that every element of A satisfies some polynomial. So from here, we can find a polynomial of smallest degree. Okay, a polynomial of smallest degree. And we call that polynomial smallest degree to be the minimal polynomial. Okay, so what is minimal polynomial of an element of A? It is the polynomial of smallest degree which is satisfied by that particular element. And without any loss of generality, we can take this polynomial again to be a monic polynomial. Monic polynomial simply means the coefficient of the highest power is always unity. Okay. So having done this, now we are going to introduce what is known as invertible element. What is meant by inverse of a operator? So we are going to define again in two forms: right inverse, left inverse, and then inverse. An element T in AV is called a right invertible if there exists a non-zero element S in AV such that T of S is equal to unit element. Okay, because we already know that unit element always exists in AV. So that's why we can talk of inverse, otherwise we cannot talk of inverse. So an element T in AV is called right invertible if there exists a non-zero element S in AV such that T of S is equal to 1. Remember, the position of S is important. If we write it to the to the right of T, then it is right inverse. If I write this to the left of T, then it will be termed as left inverse. So similarly, we can define left invertible if there exists a non-zero element U in AV such that U of T is unity. Okay, and the element T is said to be invertible or regular if it is both right as well as left invertible. And in that case, we have got Ts is equal to Ut is equal to I. Okay, and we can see that in that case, if such a exist, then right and left inverses, they are unique. That is S is equal to U. And we define and we denote the common value to by T inverse. Okay, and T inverse, if it exists, then we say T is invertible. Okay, in case T is invertible, then we say T is regular or invertible. Now we have seen that every element of AV satisfies a non-zero polynomial. And with help of this minimal polynomial or non-zero polynomial, we can characterize invertibility of an element in AV. So theorem we have got, let V be a finite dimensional vector space over F, and let T be any operator on V. Then this T is invertible if and only if the constant term in the minimal polynomial of T is non-zero. So this completely characterizes the invertibility of an operator on a finite dimensional vector space. Okay, proof is just simple, but let me just go through it. So T is given to be in AB. So T satisfies some minimal polynomial. So let Qx be equal to A naught plus A1x plus A2x square plus AMX power m with A naught, A1, AM in F be the minimal polynomial of T over F. Let us suppose that the constant term A naught is non-zero. Okay. Now since T satisfies this, since we have got Qt equal to 0, we therefore have 0 is equal to Qt. I replace x by t, and A naught being constant, I will just multiply it by unit operator. So A naught I plus A1 t plus A2 t square up to AM tm. Or from here, A naught I is the same as A naught is just, I will write A naught I is equal to minus A1 t minus A2 t square minus of AM t raised to the power m. I divide by A naught and can take t out. So what I get, I is equal to t times minus 1 upon A naught and A1 plus A2 t plus AM t raised to the power m minus 1. Now whatever is written inside bracket, I just call this as S. I just call this as S. Now, this being a polynomial T is again an element of AV. then S belongs to AB and is such that T of S is equal to I. Okay, and I can write the same as to the left of also, and with the same S. So I have got Ts is equal to I, St is also equal to I. Therefore, S is the inverse of T, that is T is invertible. So that way what we have seen, that if the constant term in the minimal polynomial of an operator is non-zero, then that particular operator is always going to be invertible. Let us see the converse. Suppose T is invertible, and suppose the constant term of the minimal polynomial of T is 0. Then we will show that it violates the condition that T is invertible. So if the constant term is 0, what we have got? 0 is equal to a1t plus a2t square plus an t raised to the power m. I can take t outside, and then whatever written inside the bracket, I just make it s. So s being a polynomial in t also belongs to AB. So what I have got? I have found an element s in AB such that s of t equal to 0. That is, t is not invertible. A contradiction. Okay. So this shows that if any linear operator is invertible if and only if the constant term occurring in the minimal polynomial of t is always non-zero. Okay, and from here, one thing more you must have noticed. Then when we are talking about the inverse, you see the nature of inverse of the of polynomial t. It is always a polynomial in t. So if t is any linear operator and if it is invertible, then the inverse is always going to be a polynomial in t also. Okay. Now our next problem is, this is very important. You must have all heard about the Cayley-Hamilton theorem. Now, what is the importance of that particular theorem? What is the importance of that particular theorem? Now we have just now seen that if V is any m-dimensional vector space, then if T belongs to AB, then T always satisfies a polynomial of degree at most m squared. Now the problem is, can we somehow reduce this degree to some convenient number? And the answer to this problem was given by Cayley-Hamilton when he proved that every square matrix satisfies its characteristic polynomial. This characteristic polynomial, it may not be minimal polynomial, but its degree is always equal to the degree of the matrix, order of the matrix. Okay, that is, every square matrix of order n satisfies its characteristic polynomial of degree m. What is characteristic polynomial? What is that? I will just discuss, because what all I am going to discuss henceforth, it is in terms of characteristic values or eigenvalues and eigenvectors. So let me start by considering characteristic roots or characteristic vectors of either say linear operator or you say matrices, square matrices. Because linear operators and matrices, they just are in one-to-one correspondence. That is, corresponding to each linear operator, you get a matrix, square matrix, and corresponding to each matrix, you get a linear operator. Therefore, the study of linear operator is equivalent to the study of matrices. So whether you study linear operators or you study matrices, one and the same thing. So we shall be just using both these invariably as and when it is convenient to us. So suppose T is any linear operator defined on a vector space V, and lambda is any scalar. Then we say this lambda is a characteristic root or eigenvalue if there exists a non-zero vector V such that T of V is equal to lambda of V. Equivalently, if lambda minus T, which is equivalent to writing lambda I minus T, because this becomes an operator, is singular. By singular, we mean an operator is said to be singular, provided for some non-zero vector V, T of V equal to 0. Okay, so we say lambda is characteristic root of T, provided lambda minus T is singular. That is, we can always find some non-zero vector V such that lambda minus T of V equal to 0. That is, T of V is equal to lambda of V. We shall prove it a little later. But once we have got this concept of linear or characteristic roots of eigenvalues, then let us see what sort of properties these characteristic values, because they are very important. In many time, they help in writing even the characteristic polynomial. The first property is, if you look up the sum of all characteristic values of a matrix, look up the sum of all characteristic roots or eigenvalues of a matrix, then this particular sum is nothing but sum of the entries on the leading diagonal of the matrix. That is called the trace of the matrix. Okay, so trace of the matrix, square matrix, is nothing but sum of the eigenvalues of that particular matrix. This is first important property which you should remember. And if you look up the product of the characteristic values or eigenvalues, it is equivalent to the value of the determinant of that particular matrix. Okay, it is equivalent to the determinant of that particular matrix. Second, third, if A is invertible matrix, if A, because not every square matrix is invertible. In case A is an invertible matrix, and if lambda is characteristic value of A, then what is the characteristic value of A inverse? It is nothing but inverse of lambda, that is 1 upon lambda. So if lambda is a characteristic value of matrix A, then 1 upon lambda is the characteristic value of A inverse. Okay, and we shall define later on what is orthogonal matrix. Matrix is said to be orthogonal if AT transpose of this, that product is nothing but unit matrix. So it says if lambda is a characteristic value of an orthogonal matrix, then 1 upon lambda is also its characteristic values. So in that case, if you know one, you know the other also. So if lambda is characteristic, then 1 upon lambda is also characteristic value of that particular matrix, provided it is orthogonal. Then we have got, if lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda n are the characteristic values of A, and if I consider scalar multiple of these characteristic values by some k, then k lambda 1, k lambda 2, there are also characteristic values of k times A. Okay, scalar multiple of matrix. So they just becomes, that is, you just multiply each of the characteristic value by k, then you get the characteristic values of this matrix Ka. And then we have got that if lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda n are characteristic values of A, then R of AB, P is any positive integer. Then lambda 1 P, lambda 2 P, they are all characteristic values of A raised to the power P, but where we lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda n are characteristic values of A. Okay, and then finally, if any of the characteristic value of A is 0, then that particular matrix is always going to be singular, that is, it is not going to be invertible. So these are some of the properties enjoyed by characteristic values of a matrix. Because many times they help in saying, there is one more result which I have not mentioned, that if you take the sum of all the entries in a particular row of a square matrix, that you consider row 1, row 2, row 3, row n. You take their sum. If the sum is same, say equal to say lambda, then lambda is always going to be an eigenvalue of that particular matrix. So just looking at that, you can write the eigenvalues, because many time in problem in net examination, there's such type of problem asked, and you can easily use this particular fact to find the characteristic values of that. Okay, as I told you that we say lambda is a characteristic value of operator T if there exists a non-zero vector V such that T or if lambda minus T is equal to singular. Equivalently, we say if there exists a non-zero vector V such that T of V is equal to lambda of V, proof is just straightforward. There is nothing to be done. Then we have got a theorem. The theorem says that if lambda in F is a characteristic root of T, then for any polynomial Qx in Fx, Q lambda is a characteristic root of Q of T. That is, you consider the polynomial in T, you consider the polynomial corresponding polynomial lambda, then this Q lambda is a characteristic root of Qt. And proof is just simple, because you have just to see if if lambda is a characteristic root of T, then you know there exists a non-zero vector V such that T of V is nothing but lambda of V. And we shall just see what is T square of V, what is T cube of V, what is T raised to the power M of V, etc. Okay. So now, if we just calculate what is T square of V, T square of V is the same as T of V, but T of V is nothing but lambda of V. That is T of lambda of V. T is linear, so lambda times TV, which is again lambda V. So T square of V is nothing but lambda square of V. And similarly, we can show that T cube of V is nothing but lambda cube of V. And if we just keep on doing this, we will see that Tk of V is nothing but lambda k of V for all positive integers k. Now suppose Qx is equal to a naught x power m plus a1 x power m minus 1, a2 x power m minus 2 plus am is any polynomial over f. Then what is Q of t? Q of t is given by this, that is replace x by t only. And I operate this Qt over V. So Qt of V is nothing but, you can just see, this is nothing but a naught t m plus and so on of V. And you can now just apply the addition property of these linear operators. And that way, and what you have made observation above, that T raised to the power k of V is nothing but lambda k of V. So if you just apply this, you will get a naught lambda to the power m plus a1 lambda raised to the power m minus 1 plus a2 m lambda to the power m minus 2 plus am of v. Now, whatever is written inside the bracket, it is nothing but a polynomial in lambda. And its degree is also again m. So it is nothing but q lambda of v. That is what we have got. Qt of V is nothing but Q lambda of V, because V is non-zero, therefore Q lambda is a characteristic value of Q of T. So if If lambda is a characteristic root of t and t satisfies some polynomial, then q lambda is again a characteristic value of q raised to the power q of t. Then we have another theorem that if lambda in f is a characteristic root of t, then lambda is the root of minimal polynomial of t. Okay, that is every characteristic root, every eigenvalue of a linear operator is always a root of the minimal polynomial of t. In particular, because you are working in finite dimensional vector spaces, t has only finite number of characteristic roots in f. So let px be the minimal polynomial of t, then p of t equal to 0. If lambda is a characteristic root of t, then there exists a non-zero vector v in V such that t of v is equal to lambda v. But what is pt of v? Pt of, because p of t equal to 0, therefore pt of v is nothing but p lambda. Number one, it is p lambda of v, and since pt equal to 0, therefore pt of v equal to 0, and hence p lambda of v equal to 0, but v is non-zero, therefore p lambda is also 0. That is, lambda is the root of px. So every characteristic root of a linear operator is always a root of its minimal polynomial. It is always a root of its minimal polynomial. Okay, and since px has only finite number of roots, in fact, since degree of px is always less than or equal to n squared, where n is nothing but dimension v, then px has at most how many roots? N squared. This shows that there can only be finite number of characteristic roots. Okay, and then we have got this simple result, which you must have already proved, that if T and S are two linear operators, and suppose S is regular, that is, if S is invertible, then both these T and S, T and inverse have the same minimal polynomial of T. Provided you can find an invertible operator as such that this condition is equal to that particular operator. So in other words, we will see that T and ST S inverse, they are similar operators, and similar operators are always going to have the same minimal polynomial. Okay, so let us see the proof. It's just one line. So given that T and S belongs to AB, where S is regular. So let us calculate what is ST S inverse powers, various powers. So what is ST S inverse square? It is ST S inverse into ST S inverse, and you apply associative law, you will get ST S inverse T S inverse, that is ST square S inverse. Sorry. Actually, S inverse S will be I, so it will be, there is a little mistake here. So it will be ST square S inverse. So square of ST S inverse is nothing but square just comes in the middle term. Likewise, Q will be equal to ST S cube. And therefore, if you just calculate that Px be the minimal polynomial of T, then Pt equal to 0. Therefore, what is P of ST S inverse? It is nothing but S of Pt S inverse. But Pt equal to 0. Therefore, this is S0 S inverse, that is 0. So the minimal polynomial of T and ST S inverse are same. So similar linear operators have the same minimal polynomial. And after that, First of all, we define what is meant by eigenvector or characteristic vector. And it is defined again with the help of eigenvalue. Because what we have said that a scalar lambda is an eigenvalue of an operator T provided there exists a non-zero vector V such that T of V is equal to lambda of V. This non-zero vector V, it is said to be eigenvector belonging to lambda. This non-zero vector V, it is called eigenvector belonging to lambda. And then I will just state this theorem because similar theorem we have proved in algebra also, that if lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda k be distinct characteristic values of T, operator T, and if V1, V2, Vk are characteristic vectors belonging to lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda k, then these vectors are always independent. They are always linearly independent. And after that, now remember, when we were talking about the quotient groups, quotient rings, or quotient fields, etc., we could not write quotient of group with respect to any subgroup. What we required there, that we could talk of quotient with respect to any subgroup, provided it was a normal subgroup. That is, if G was a normal group and N was a normal subgroup of G, then only then we could talk of G by N. Otherwise, we could not talk. Likewise, in rings, we had the concept of ideals. That is, if R was any ring, I was any ideal, then only then we could talk of R by I. Otherwise, we could not talk. But as far as vector spaces are concerned, it is not necessary that a subspace should satisfy certain condition. We can write quotient with respect to any subgroup of a given group. Okay. So this is one observation you must keep in mind, that as far as quotient of a vector space is concerned, we can write always with respect to any subspace of that particular space. And secondly, the invariant subspaces, they are also going to play a very, very important role in our subsequent discussion of the theory. So first of all, again, let me just define what is meant by invariant. A subspace W of V is said to be invariant under T, where T is any operator on V, if T of W is contained in W, that is T of W, where W belongs to W, belongs to W. If this is the case, then we say this W is invariant under T. Remember, T of W is contained in W. This is also going to be a subspace of W. Okay. Now V is a vector space. W is a subspace of V. W is a subspace of V. Then, and T is a linear operator on V. I can always talk of the restriction of T to W. Okay, this restriction is always going to be a linear transformation, linear operator from W to W. And I will denote this by T bar. So if W is a invariant subspace of V and T is a linear operator, then T always induces a linear operator on W, and that T bar always induces a operator not only W, but it also induces on quotient space V by W. V by W. And how it is defined? What are the elements of V by W? They are nothing but cosets. They are elements of the form V plus W. So T bar of V plus W, it is defined as TV plus W because, why? Because T is defined for every element of V. Okay. So for V, each V in V, we define V plus W. Of course, whenever V belongs to W, V plus V, W will be nothing but W itself. Okay. So this T bar always induces a linear operator T bar on V by W given by this. And further, he says if T satisfies a polynomial Qx in Fx, then T bar also satisfies that particular polynomial. And if P1x is the minimal polynomial of T bar over F and Px is the minimal polynomial of T, then P1x always divides Px. That is, P1x shall always be a factor of Px. Now it's a very important result because it has got many applications in our further discussion. As far as proving that T bar is linear, it is simple. There is nothing to be done. You can just either refer to the book or when I give you my notes, you can just refer them. Okay, so it is easy to see that T bar is linear. Let me prove the later part. Okay, later part simply says that if V1 bar and V2 bar be any two elements of V bar, we show that T bar of V1 bar plus V2 bar is another T bar V1 bar plus T bar V2 bar. Again, this is simple. There is nothing to be done. So T bar that we have seen, it is linear. Because last part, then you consider compute powers of T and that of T bar. So let V bar be any element of V plus W in V bar. Then what is bar of T square V bar? Bar of T square V bar is nothing but V bar is nothing but V plus W. But T square of V plus W, you know, it is nothing but T square of V plus W, that is T of V plus W, that is T bar. Again, you can see that bar of T square of V bar is the same as square of T bar of V. Okay, proceeding in a similar manner, we can see bar of Tk is nothing but K of T bar for all K greater than or equal to 0. We get that if Qx is now any polynomial, then bar of Qt is the same thing as Qt bar. Hence, if Qx in Fx be such that Q of T equal to 0, then it means Q of T bar is also equal to 0. Okay, finally, then if P1x be the minimal polynomial of T bar over F, and if Qx is any polynomial such that Q T bar equal to 0, then P1x always divides Qx. And if Px is any polynomial over F such that Pt bar equal to 0, then bar of Pt equal to 0, then P of T bar equal to 0, because that we have already seen. And since P1x is the minimal polynomial, and this is also T bar also satisfy Px, therefore P1x must divide Px. So this proves the result, and we shall use this in our next result. Okay.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Can we do in next class?
Yeah, I'm just going to stop. No problem. I'm going to stop. So we have just built the building block for our next important theorem. That is, under what conditions a linear operator or a matrix can be reduced to triangular form. Okay, I stop here and I will start by considering this particular theorem. And remember, I am following Stein's book. Please go read through. It is chapter 6 of that particular book. Okay. Just whenever
you.
if you want to revise, you please revise from there. And I have not received the common ID so far, so that I can send my notes on abstract algebra to you. Okay, kindly send me your common ID so that
Okay, sir.
everybody receives.
सर हमारी कोई कॉमन आईडी नहीं है एक्चुअली। सुनील
अच्छा।
बंसल जी की जो आईडी है आप उस पे ही भेज सकते हैं सर।
Okay, I'll send. Okay.
वो हमारी तरफ से रिप्रेजेंटेटिव है सर, किसी को ऑब्जेक्शन नहीं है, वो क्लास भी कई बार शेड्यूल करते हैं उधर से।
Because many times people complain that I have not received it. They will put on as the blame on Sunil Bansal.
No, not an issue. You just send to single one and that will be managed here. Not an issue, sir.
But get sure that everybody received it. Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
sure,
sir.
sir.
Okay.
So today I will send. Today I will send.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Bye.